When everything around you is shifting, the greatest leadership move may not be moving faster. It may be learning how to stay centered enough to hear clearly, lead wisely, and carry peace into rooms that are full of pressure. Ready to grow with resilience, clarity, and confidence in leadership, career, and faith? Welcome to The Next Move. I'm Orvin Kimbrough, CEO, author, and founder of The Thriver's Path. I went from foster care to the CEO seat, and here's what I learned. Transformation doesn't start with a title. It starts with your next move. How you reframe your thinking, reclaim your agency, and rename what's possible. If you're done circling and ready to step forward, you're in the right place. Let's make your next move your best move. Welcome back to The Next Move, the podcast where we explore faith, leadership, and personal growth to help you take your next step with purpose and confidence. Folks, I'm your host, Orvin Kimbrough. Today, I want to talk about the leaders. Today, I want to talk about the leaders who stay centered when everything around them shifts. And I think this matters right now because we are living and leading in a time where almost nothing feels still for very long. Markets shift, expectations shift, teams, they shift, technology shifts, culture shifts, resources shift, the pace shift, the pressure, the pressure shifts. And if you are leading anything, a company, a team, a family, a ministry, a project, or just trying to lead yourself well, you know what it feels like when the ground underneath you starts moving. You can feel it in your body before you can explain it with your words. Your shoulders tighten, your mind races, your patience gets thinner, your sleep, well, it changes, your prayers get shorter, or maybe, just maybe, they get more desperate. And here is the honest truth. Leadership does not exempt you from feeling the shift. It just means people may be looking to you while you are feeling it. That is folks, that's a heavy place to stand. And sometimes if we are not careful, we start believing that good leadership means we are supposed to have an immediate answer for every moving part. We think we have to solve the whole thing in one meeting. We think we have to absorb everybody's anxiety and still walk out smiling. But I have learned something over time. People don't always need you to have every answer. Sometimes they need you to be centered enough not to become another source of instability. Ooh, did you catch that? Sometimes the room does not need more volume, it needs more presence. Sometimes the moment does not need more reaction, it needs more grounding. Sometimes the people around you, well, they don't need a leader who can predict the future. They need a leader who can steady the present. That is centered leadership. And centered leadership is not passive. It's not soft. It's not sitting back while the world moves. Centered leadership is disciplined alignment. It is knowing who you are when the room gets loud. It is remembering what you value when the pressure increases. It is staying connected to your calling when circumstances try to pull you into fear. It is the ability, my friends, it's the ability to say, this situation is changing, but I don't have to lose myself inside of it. It's not just, don't miss this, it's not just emotional intelligence. Guess what? That is spiritual foundation. It's spiritual formation. Isaiah 26:3 says, you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. I love that phrase, whose minds are steadfast. Steadfast does not mean untouched. Steadfast does not mean unmoved by reality. Steadfast does not mean pretending things are fine when they are not. Steadfast means anchored. It means there is something deeper holding you than the thing trying to shake you. That is, folks, that's what trust does. Trust gives your mind somewhere to return. When your mind starts chasing every possible outcome, trust gives it a place to come back to. When your emotions start rising with the anxiety in the room, trust gives your spirit somewhere to stand. And I want to be clear. I want to be clear. This is not about acting like pressure is not real. Folks, pressure is real. You know that. I know that. I've had moments in leadership where the pressure was not theoretical. It was financial. It was operational. It was legal. It was reputational. It was personal. It was spiritual. I've had moments where people were looking for confidence, and inside I was wrestling. I've had moments where I was praying and thinking at the same time, asking God for wisdom while also looking at numbers, looking at people, risks, deadlines, personalities, and consequences. And in those moments, I learned that centered leadership does not begin with the room, it begins within. Because if I'm scattered internally, I will eventually export that chaos externally. If I am unsettled inside, I may call it urgency, but it may really be anxiety. If I am leading from fear, I may call it decisiveness, but it may really be control. And that is where we have to slow down enough to tell the truth, not to shame ourselves, but to lead ourselves. Because before you can lead the shift around you, you have to notice the shift inside you. That is part of the thriver's path. We are not just trying to perform better, we are learning how to become whole enough to lead with clarity, confidence, and purpose. And that requires the inner work, the heart work, the head work, the hand work. Heart work asks, what am I feeling? And what is this moment stirring in me? Head work asks, what is true? What is assumed? And what story am I telling myself? Hand work asks, what is the next faithful move I can make from a grounded place? Not the perfect move, the next faithful move. Because sometimes leadership becomes overwhelming because we are trying to carry the whole future in one day. But God often gives us enough light for the next step, not the next decade, not the whole map, not every answer, folks, just the next step. And centered leadership learns how to honor that. They do not let uncertainty rush them into recklessness. They do not let fear convince them that stillness is weakness. They do not let anxiety of other people, of others, become the atmosphere they lead from. They learn how to pause. They learn how to pause. And I know that word pause can feel uncomfortable for leaders. I know it feels uncomfortable for me at times. We like to take action. We like action. We like movement. We like progress. But a pause is not the absence of leadership. A pause can be leadership. A pause can keep you from making a decision just to relieve pressure. A pause can help you hear what is actually being said beneath the noise. A pause can help you ask, what energy do I want to bring into this room? That question has become practical for me. Before a hard conversation, before a high stakes meeting, before a moment where emotions are already elevated. What energy do I want to bring into this room? Because if I don't set my intention before I enter the room may set it for me. I hope you caught that. If the room is anxious, I may become anxious. If the room is reactive, I may become reactive. If the room is cynical, I may become defensive. If the room is afraid, I may start leading from fear. But a centered leader walks in with a different kind of awareness, not arrogance, not denial, not superiority, awareness. A centered leader says, I know there is pressure here, but pressure does not get to define my posture. That is, folks, that is the reframe. The shift is not the enemy. The shift is the test. And sometimes the shift reveals what still needs to be strengthened in us. Ooh, I hope you caught that. The shift reveals what still needs to be strengthened in us. It reveals where we are still attached to control. It reveals where we are still outsourcing our peace to outcomes. It reveals where our identity has become too dependent on applause, certainty, or success. It reveals where we need to return to God, return to values, return to purpose, return to the quiet center. And that's not a bad thing. That is growth. That is formation. That is how we move from being stuck to being strengthened. So the reframe is this: centered leadership is not about avoiding disruption. It is about becoming deeply rooted enough to lead through disruption without losing your soul. The reclaim is this: you are not responsible for controlling every shift around you, but you are responsible for the spirit, the posture, and presence you bring into the shift. I hope you caught that. And the rename is this: what feels like instability may also be an invitation to deeper alignment, an invitation to remember who you are, an invitation to trust God beyond what you can see, an invitation to stop letting external movement create internal confusion, an invitation to become the kind of leader who does not just manage change, but brings steadiness, wisdom, and peace into it. That is leadership. It's not loud leadership, not frantic leadership, not performative leadership, grounded leadership. A centered leader listens longer than they react. A centered leader operates from values, not vibes. A centered leader responds instead of reacts. You hear me? I'm being redundant for a reason. A centered leader interprets change before internalizing it. A centered leader does not borrow anxiety from the room. A centered leader does not outsource emotional stability to outcomes. A centered leader carries peace because they have practiced returning to peace. And maybe that is your next move this week. Not to fix everything, not to force certainty, not to chase every shift. Maybe your next move is to return to the center, to pause before you react, to pray before you perform, to ask what is true before you assume what is worse, to remember that peace is not something you wait for after the storm. Peace can be something you practice in the storm. So before you walk into that next meeting, that next conversation, that next decision, or that next uncertain moment, ask yourself, what energy do I want to bring into this room? What truth do I need to remember? What values need to guide me? What is the next faithful move? And then lead from there, because the world will keep shifting. That is not new, but we have to be rooted in identity. Thank you for joining me on The Next Move. I'm honored to walk with you as you continue leading, growing, and becoming who you were called to be. Thanks for spending time with me on The Next Move. I hope today's reflection helped you see your situation differently and reminded you that you're not stuck, you're being strengthened. If this episode resonated, share it with someone who's standing at the edge of their next move. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's ahead. For deeper reflections, tools, and guided pathways for growth, visit orvinkimbrough.com and explore the Thriver's Path. Until next time, remember, every small step taken with intention moves you closer to the life and leadership you're becoming. Let's keep moving forward together.